Will our authors join us? Will our creators
Yes.
join us before we get started, or they just come up?
Hi, we're ready to start? It's my
Thank you. Hi, good morning. I'm Jennifer Jenkins. I'm from San Diego Public Library. Nice to meet you. Okay, good morning, you awesome nerds. Happy Comic-Con and welcome to Cecil. Thank you so much. Woo, yeah, I like it. Thank you so much for being here today. The publisher panels are some of my favorite sessions during the Comic-Con conference for educators and librarians, and I'm so excited that you decided to join us. My name is Jennifer Jenkins, and I'm the Deputy Director of Customer Experience for the San Diego Public Library. Today, you are going to hear from some amazing professionals and creators all about how we can use comics, graphic novels, games, and pop culture to increase literacy in our communities, foster curiosity about STEAM, and promote lifelong learning. As a librarian who is also a big old nerd and a huge fan of graphic novels and pop culture, I always look forward to learning about how we can use the things that we love to connect to our community and fulfill our library mission. I have a tremendous amount of gratitude for Comic-Con, who partners with us each year to put together an incredible free conference. I am so grateful to our speakers who share their amazing work that they've been doing to inspire us all, and for the library staff who makes this weekend possible. Please come by our welcome table between panels to chat with our staff about all of the amazing Comic-Con and pop culture activities the library has been working on, including the release of our 2024 Comic-Con commemorative library card with artwork by John Jennings, which you can see on these lovely shirts. And you can sign up for one of those cards on the ground floor. We also have a booth at the convention center for those of you attending the con, and we would love for you to stop by and say hello. Now for a little bit of housekeeping. We do ask that you silence your phones during the conference. If you need the restroom, those are located on the other side of the patio through those doors across from the entrance. And just so you know, the workshop ends today at 5:30 and the library closes at 6. Most importantly, our fabulous authors will be signing books on the patio after each session on the Jim Daw Terrace to my left, and our library shop will be selling all of the books in the store on the ground floor. Thank you again for joining us for Cecil. We've got some amazing panels lined up for you today. Now I'd like to hand it over to Tina Lerno, Digital Content Librarian and Comics Specialist at Los Angeles Public Library, and many special guests for the Creating Captivating Characters workshop. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. So our panel today is called Creating Captivating Characters, and I have some amazing creators with us today. First is Richard Ashley Hamilton. He is the award-winning Cuban-American writer best known for his storytelling across DreamWorks Animation's How to Train Your Dragon and Guillermo del Toro's Tales of Arcadia franchises. And next up, we have Brenna Thummler, and Brenna has always known her life is haunted, much like Marjorie Glatt. She grew up in a small Pennsylvania town where piano practice and ghost stories were part of her daily routine. But it wasn't until she attended Ringling College of Art and Design that she realized her passion for storytelling, as well as her hatred for laundry. Now back in her hometown, she spends her days drawing, writing, and being suspicious of sheets. And next is Gabriel Valentin, and he is the creator behind the cross-media brand Digital Lizards of Doom. Gabriel is currently collaborating with Johns Hopkins University as they study the impact of the Digital Lizards of Doom book series and its curriculum has had within the San Diego Unified School District. Gabriel Valentin's work is a beacon in the world of children's literature, illuminating the path for future generations to not only read, but to dream, to learn, and to soar. And last but not least is Emmanuel Guerrero, and he is from Santa Ana, California, which is a suburb of Los Angeles. He drew comics in his spare time while he studied history of California State University, Long Beach. After he graduated, he began selling his risograph comics at comic expos around the US. And once he began self-publishing, he could not stop making comics. Cactus Kid and the Battle for Star Rock Mountain is his first published graphic novel. Thank you, everybody. All right, so I have introduced you, but if you want to just kind of we'll go down the line, and if you have any exciting things to tell us about what you're working on now, and
There's nothing exciting about me personally. I can tell you about my graphic novel
Sure.
if you want that. It's called Scoop. It's set in my hometown of Miami, Florida. It's about a girl named Sophie Cooper. She's 15 years old. She's Cuban American, like me, believe it or not. The one thing we have in difference other than gender is her dad has been accused of like a really horrible financial crime. He's stuck on house arrest. He has the ankle monitor. And her life, she just wanted to be a normal teenager. But because of this, Sophie's life is definitely abnormal. There hasn't been a trial yet, but everyone in the news media believes that her dad is guilty of sin. The only person who believes he's innocent is Sophie. And in her 15-year-old brain, she thinks that, well, if the news is painting my dad out to be a bad guy, I'm going to use the news to clear his name, and then boom, I'll get my normal life back. So she gets an internship at a TV news station in Miami, only unfortunately ain't exactly CNN or Fox News or Newsmax or anything like that. They're the worst news station in the world. It's total amateur hour. They show up late to all the stories. They get all the facts wrong, the names wrong. But she meets a journalist there who kind of takes her under his wing. She starts to learn the ropes about news reporting, and she starts to discover people are calling in news tips, but they're about weird things: UFOs, ghosts, alligator people, time travel. It all sounds made up, but because Sophie's an intern, the low person on the totem pole, she goes and checks them all out. It turns out they're all true, and even weirder, they're all connected to the case against her dad. So now she has to become a journalist, prove that all these supernatural things are real, and Bob's your uncle. She gets her normal life back. So that's Scoop.
Thank you. Cool, Brenna.
Yeah, so my books are the Sheets trilogy, so Sheets, Devil Kids, and Lights. And the tagline is like, mental health plus ghosts. It's kind of like three middle school aged kids, and they're all dealing with death in different ways. So one of them has lost her mother, one of them is considering suicide, and the other one is in fact a ghost. So it's kind of like how their experiences dealing with death in these different ways are keeping them apart from each other, when really they have this all in common, and what they need to overcome to find friendship within themselves. So it's like, friendship's hard, man. Like, it's like stories about how, like, the struggles of friendship. And the thing I'm currently working on is, I'm calling it a post-office Western. It's called Gumshoe, and that's all I'll say. Get ready. It's just like a wacky adventure. It's my current project, Gumshoe, yeah.
Hi, my name's Gabriel Valentin, and I write a book series called Digital Lizards of Doom. And it is about an ancient pineapple demon who traps a bunch of characters from another dimension inside a video game simulated universe. And the characters have to work together to figure out how to escape this game. And over a period of the series, the characters are, at first, are not aware that they're trapped in a video game, so they slowly become aware that they're trapped. And each character represents a different attribute or emotional characteristic that we all have as human beings. So the overarching theme is, what does it take to overcome, fears and emotional trauma and different things that we all face as human beings, to be able to be victorious and grow and level up, definitely pun intended. And yeah, that's Digital Lizards of Doom.
My name is Emmanuel. I am the creator of Cactus Kid. It's a story about a little cactus on a motorcycle who wants to be the best wizard in the world. And yeah, the first one came out in March, and the second one comes out in October. And yeah, it's just a fun, goofy time.
Awesome, thank you. How do you come up with your character ideas?
Should I
Yeah,
start?
we can, or,
Well, I think in the case of Scoop, it's a little bit of a cheat because it's, I mean, Sophie's her own character, but it's based a lot on my upbringing. Like I said, I was born and raised in Miami. When I was a teenager, I had an internship at CNN in Miami. My first day on the job was unfortunately the day that Gianni Versace, the fashion designer, was killed in front of his home. So I got, on my first day of my internship, I got to go down to a murder scene and check all that out. And yeah,
Wow.
it was pretty intense. And I never want to like make light of that tragedy, but it definitely informed a lot of the plot of Scoop. And I just learned so much about the reporting process and just, you know, watching actual journalists cover it, seeing how they built a story, kind of the weird dynamics and politics behind the camera, the people who would come up and offer information or clues or just make up random crap just so they could be on TV and have their 15 seconds of fame. Yeah, I think just, you know, sort of a lot of sort of the trappings of that character. I'm just sort of writing what I know.
Yes, very much writing what I know. The protagonist in all three books, Marjorie, is very much based on myself. So if you're reading, you're like, this character's pretty cool. Thank you. It's me. And it's a lot about just putting my emotions into a character, and then everybody else around them is sort of what this character needs to grow or what is going to get in their way of achieving their goals. I will say that the protagonist in book 2, Delicates, she was created after I read an article about a very young child who had died by suicide. And I realized that these problems are very real. They're happening to young people, and this needs to be talked about. So, yeah, it was kind of like realizing what I wanted to be the end goal of the stories and what characters needed the most to get there, what characters are struggling the most, and how can I help them overcome their struggles to actually get to a point of hope and life. So that was kind of how I created the characters, yeah.
When it comes to Digital Lizards of Doom, I tried to make sure every character had something that I really felt we all struggle with. Some of these things obviously more than others, but you know, the part of us that wants to control everything, and how dangerous that can get if we don't keep it in check, which would be a character, the main villain is Pineapple Pete, who just wants to control this world, and he has his reasons why he wants to do that. And we have a character like Dana Deathley. Her and her mom both suffered in this very terrible way, and so they're parallel characters of each other. One chooses to seek out revenge and hurt other people because she was hurt, and the other character chooses to heal herself and try to go down a path that allows her to heal and help others as well, not suffer in the same way she did. So every character in the book series is very much just a part of something that I think at some point in time we all will go through and we'll all kind of embody. But like I said, it's I tried to make sure it kind of applied to everybody, because I know some of us deal with certain things more than other people do. So
The way I usually come up with a character for the Cactus Kid universe is usually it starts off with like a doodle, and then as I write the story, I'll go back to my doodles. Like I just have an archive of doodles and be like, oh, that character kind of looks like a jerk. I need a jerk character. And so then I'll kind of like develop it as I go. And I base it off of people that of things I've seen and people I know. So like right now I'm working on Cactus Kid 3, and I need like a monster truck driver character. So I'm going with like Macho Man, Randy Savage, and then this guy named Steve at work who lives in an RV and is kind of a cowboy. So I'm like kind of blending that together, and like that's kind of how I go about developing my characters.
does Steve know he's about to make his comic book?
He'll know when it comes out.
so the character's name is Steve at work?
Well, no.
Oh.
Right. I
It
think
is now.
it's windbag because Steve kind of talks a lot. So like it's kind of But yeah,
Windbag?
windbag.
He's gonna love.
Yeah.
So are these ideas that you've had since forever, or did with, newer, are these all your first series? Well, I guess everybody, if it's your first series, are these characters that you've just had rolling around in your head for a long time, or did you come up with them as you came up with the idea for the book? Like, how did it all come together? You can go in whatever order.
So I first came up with the name Digital, actually not the name, but I came up with the original concept for Digital Lizards of Doom was whenever the movie The Truman Show came out, I don't know what year that was, but I was on a plane going to visit my family in Ohio. I was very little. It just came out, the movie just came out. And I watched this movie, and I think, that movie literally changed my life. And I was like, man, this is so cool. There's like this guy, and he's controlling everything, and then there's this one guy who has no idea he's in the simulation, but everyone around him does, and how weird is that? I'm like, man, it'd be really cool if this was a video game, though. That'd be a lot more interesting to me at the time, as a kid. And so as time went on, I became obsessed with that idea, and I just started adding, it wasn't a video game it was a video game at first, but it was still kind of like in this globe, spoilers, I guess, if you haven't seen Truman Show. Shame on you, by the way. And
20-year-old movie.
And so I had this concept. I just kind of kept adding characters. I was like, and originally Dizzy Doom was the main character, and he was the only one who didn't know that he was trapped in the game. But then after a while, I was like, oh, it'd be really cool if this person didn't know either. And then eventually it was like nobody knew, and only one person knew. And so, yeah, kind of, I guess, I don't know, however old I was at that point, and then eventually I just said, I'm going to actually put this into action and write out the story that's just been floating around in my brain.
Well, I'll say, I think graphic novels are very in the moment, and I think maybe you can all speak to this, but your books are kind of now, it's as you're writing them. They're kind of different timelines. Like, it's when you're writing them and then what they become over time. But as you look back on what you've created, you realize, oh, maybe I wouldn't have done it that way, but that's how I did it then. So it's like speaking to who you are at that point, and my characters are very much in the moment. I create them at the time of writing. For Sheets, it started as a project for a college writing class, and kind of put it in a folder, and it went away for a couple years, and then I brought it back out, and Marjorie changed a lot. She's the protagonist of the book series. It started with a very small idea, but then you expand on that based on what you're thinking at the time, where you want the characters to go at the time, and it's strange to look back and realize, oh, that's where I was in my life back then, and it's kind of like a really cool reminder of what your characters meant to you at that time and how they've changed.
It's like time travel, kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
How long from when you had the idea to the publication? Like, is there like a 2-3 year?
Yeah, so I worked on the college assignment in, let's say 2014 or 2015, and then started working on the actual graphic novel in 2017. So a couple years. It stayed in that folder, and I thought nothing would happen with it, and then here we are. Pretty cool.
I think like 18 years for me. I mean, that my internship was a long time ago, but I think kind of the part 2 of the origin of Scoop was my favorite TV show ever is Veronica Mars. My wife and I used to watch it back when we were still dating, and then it ended way too early after 3 seasons, and I was so despondent. I was like, if I can't watch Veronica Mars, I got to try and make my own version of it. And so that's when I started thinking back to the internship, and then, adding UFOs and ghosts and stuff like that to it. But it was a kind of a long process of iterating on it, and it was, Scoop was published by a smaller publisher a few years ago, but nobody really found out about it, and it wasn't until I hooked up with Mad Cave, and now Volume 1 has been re-released. This year, the first book came out in April, yes, And we've got 3 more volumes on the way.
Nice.
For me, Cactus Kid, like the universe of Cactus Kid is older than Cactus Kid. He was kind of a character I developed because I wanted a jerk character. I wanted like a Seinfeld Newman type of relationship, and Cactus Kid just kind of fell into that. And as I kept working on that, people gravitated towards him more. So then that was around like 2017. And then I started pitching like in 21. Yeah, so it's fairly old, I guess. But
Is that weird to then go back, and revisit these characters that you've held on to for so long, or to finally sort of bring them to life?
yeah, it's
Like
weird to see like, oh man, you really couldn't draw him back then, He's really, the shape language has changed a lot.
Okay. I know some of you work alone and some of you in a more collaborative space, or at least the projects that I read. Do you like, if you work alone, do you like working alone? Do you miss that collaborative feeling, or the opposite? Do you find you get more from a collaboration if you're coming up with the writing but somebody else is designing? Or how does that relationship work?
I work mostly alone. I prefer working alone, but I do need to every now and then come out of my dungeon and just like bounce ideas off like my girlfriend Rachel. Like, what do you think? Is this weird? Is this good? And then, so I do like that part of, I guess, that collaboration, but mostly by myself, I prefer.
Yeah, I think I can't draw, so like at all. So I draw these little stick figures to show, like thumbnails to show the artist what to do. So I really like that part. Sometimes it gets frustrating because you can't always describe the scene you're trying to make. So I sometimes I get frustrated with myself in that way. But yeah, I like both. I like the collaboration process, and I think it's really important to, even if you're not working with somebody, like if their name's not attached to the book, I think it's really important to collaborate with your friends and just get opinions about things, because you might have a really good idea and a really good book, but then you collaborate with somebody or get someone's opinion, and then they just unlock something that makes the book great. So actually, real quick, I just want to brag about Richard for a second, because I had a meeting with him, and I asked him to just look over a story that I wanted to see if he was interested in helping develop with me. And then I don't even understand how his brain works. It's on a different level. So I sent him this tiny little thing, and he instantly was like, he pointed out like 9 things. I'm like, this just made the story amazing. So yeah, I think even if, you don't end up working with someone on that book, that collaboration is always important, because, you want the world to feel alive. So it's really good to get other people's points of view and opinions and I think that's what really makes the world feel alive and real.
Do you get to choose who you work with? Or does the publisher assign you the different folks? Or
No, I mean, when it comes to the artists and stuff like that, I get to choose that part. So it's a lot of fun. The Mad Cave is awesome. So yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I'd say for me, comics is all about collaboration, and it's, I think, for my personality, the right kind of combination. I've written, chapter books, novels, and that's a very solitary experience. It's just you writing on your own, and then you send it to your editor, and hopefully you'll get some communication back. And then I've worked in animation, which I would say is maybe too much collaboration, too many cooks in the kitchen, and some writers' rooms can get toxic for various reasons. But with comics, the best feeling in the world is not the writing the script, but starting to see the art come in at the different stages, whether it's just the line art or the colors. The lettering is like such a revelation too. And I would say it's not just the creative collaboration, but sort of psychologically, this collaboration of feeling like you're part of a bigger team. It's really hard to make a comic. I think everyone here can attest to that, right? And then it's also, once the book is made, it has to be marketed, it has to be sold, it has to be put up here at conventions and everything. And so it's a huge relief for me to think I don't have to do all this myself. I used to self-publish. It almost broke me. Maybe it did break me. But now to be part of a larger team and everyone kind of having each other's backs, it's just a great feeling.
Nice.
Yeah, we're all a little broken, aren't we?
Yeah. Gabriel in particular. Got some real demons.
Yeah, I always say no writer writes alone. I think everyone pulls from, well, the editors obviously do a ton of work for us. Thank you, editors. Friends, life experiences, they all go into what you are creating. For me, though, I really enjoy doing both the writing and the art. Not only do I love control, I feel like graphic novels is such a distinct language. The art and the text are so glued together in this language that is not replicated anywhere else. So when you have these words and these images, it's like really hard for me to imagine someone doing half of that, because it's like the whole thing is part of who this character is, part of who this story is. I really respect people who can kind of separate the two and collaborate in that way, but it's definitely really difficult for me. I like doing both of them together.
It's just so interesting that, especially, even on the same panel, we have folks who are working on their own, and then folks who work collaboratively, and just hearing like the pros and cons of both. And it sounds like they both have good parts and bad parts.
I think in my mind, the text of a graphic novel is sort of telling the story, and then the illustrations are telling the truth. So you could write something and hand that over to an illustrator, and the images can tell an entirely different story than what is being written, and that's how cool graphic novels are. Like, you can get kind of two stories in one, and it's so much like real life. Like, what people say is not necessarily what they're saying, because you have to read body language, you have to read faces, and what is being paid attention to in the world is also different than what is being said. So for me, I love finding that balance between what is being said in the dialogue versus what is being illustrated in the images.
Nice. Did you, where you went to school, or if folks were self-taught, did that influence the design of the characters? Is it something you've sort of had in your head that it's going to look like this, if you're not drawing them yourself, but you have this distinct idea of how that character is going to look? Did your school influence that, or these are ideas you've just always had?
I think for me, I've been absorbing whatever art forms I could get my hands on, since I was very little. I grew up reading like Edgar Rice Burroughs books and Tolkien and early Gygax novels, and so just the descriptions of these characters and how their hair moved, and there's no pictures, but you can see how it's described so well that I think when I thought of a pineapple demon, I knew exactly what that pineapple demon looked like. Just like, oh, this is what it looks like, and all of the characters really, and they all kind of, they also all kind of represent different aspects of pop culture. So, Pineapple Demon is this, or Pineapple Pete is this pineapple demon who represents like a pineapple company's logo. So I kind of modeled him after the earliest McDonald's logo, with the guy like kind of winking and giving his thumb. And Dizzy Doom represents early indie American comics. So he's kind of this cool surfer dude and has like a Hawaiian T-shirt. And then Commander Echo represents gothic sci-fi. So he's this big, tall robot with a box head, because that's like what all the robots look like back then. So yeah, I had a pretty clear idea, and actually, kind of going back to your earlier question, that has been probably the most like rough part about collaborating with artists, because they're like, oh, I really want Commander Echo's head to look like this, and I'm like, no, it needs to be a box. It needs to be a box. Like, it would be so much cooler. I'm like, that is really cool, but it needs to be a box. Yeah. So.
I also see a little bit of you in like meeting you now and then having seen the artwork, like your personage comes across in the
I'm gonna
books.
take that as a compliment.
It is, it is.
Thank you.
I thought it was an insult, but no, that's 100% true. Gabriel's warmth totally comes through.
My college was definitely very influential. I remember this very specific project we had my freshman year where my illustration professor was like, okay, you guys have to do an illustration for next class. I was like, what? It was kind of the first time we were forced to work very quickly. And up until that point, we were just sort of doing what we thought we liked to do. And this forced us to do something very, very quickly and just what came naturally to us. So we kind of realized where our style was based on what came easy, almost like what we were meant to be doing. And that was the first time that I ever did an illustration that felt like me, and that illustration eventually influenced my current style.
Did you have characters that you'd been drawing since you were a kid, or it was really in school that it developed?
I had been drawing ever since I was a kid, for sure. I think the thing is, that assignment, most everybody ended up drawing like what they were drawing in their sketchbooks, because it was just what they were doing. They were doodling. Like, it wasn't, I'm trying to do this right. I'm trying to do something great. I'm just doing what is me. And so I feel like everyone's assignment for that project was very much what they had already been doing. They just didn't think it was right until then.
Nice.
I'd say for me and for Scoop, it was maybe less school sort of forming it, and more just the city of Miami. Like, Scoop is set there. I was born and raised there. We use a lot of photo reference for locations. I just thought that it was important for the real world stuff to feel as real as possible, so that when we start to get into the more fantastical, supernatural, sci-fi kind of things, we're more willing to believe it, because everything else feels so grounded, and hopefully the emotions, feel real and earned. But I guess I would say that, I went to film school, I studied screenwriting, and I guess the good thing about that discipline, I think it's kind of similar to comics writing. You have to think very visually, and there has to be a real economy of language, certainly on a screenplay page, but I'd say even more on a comics page. Like, my favorite part of the process is when I can delete lines of dialogue, because the art is doing all the heavy lifting and conveying it so much more elegantly than anything I can write. And so I think, if you learn how to write comics, that's the best kind of boot camp for any kind of storying afterwards. If you can write a comic, you can definitely write a screenplay, you can write a novel, you can write anything else.
For me, I think I developed my style because I didn't go to traditional art school, so I just was mostly just kind of developed something that I could replicate and just keep doing. So I kept it very simple and very. Also, the original intention, like the world of Cactus Kid was a little bit darker when it started out. So I thought like keeping it bubbly and like round and stuff would be a good counterbalance to that. So yeah, that kind of is where the style developed.
Nice.
I would say.
Do you have styles or drawing ideas that you're willing to give out to, I guess this is for everybody, to give out to the public, versus ones that you're like, no, I want to hang on to this for myself?
I feel like I'm only capable of doing like the Cactus Kid style, like the simple, so I'll give it out,
If anyone else wants.
Could you clarify what you mean by give it out?
Yeah.
I just imagine that there maybe are drawings or sketches or characters that are almost like journaling or a diary, something that you just draw for yourself, versus I have an idea for a book and I have an idea for a character and I'm willing to share that, versus things that, as an artist maybe that that you're
Yes.
not?
I'm pretty, like, I will share anything. I'll share my sketchbooks quite easily. I will not share the characters I'm currently working on. So the characters that are in my book right now, I've not released to the world. They will be a lovely surprise once I decide to unleash them into society.
I don't know if this counts, but I think it's something Gabriel and I've talked about before, which is when I started writing, I would just try and write characters that I thought would be popular or that an audience would like, or a character that was so universal to the point of being totally bland, you know? It was like a character that was for everyone but wound up being for no one. And what I found over time, and what I like so much about Gabriel's writing is it's actually kind of a little bit of a paradox, but the more specific you make a character, and like in the case of Scoop with Sophie, the more I base her on my own life and things that happen to me, strangely, somehow the more universal she becomes. I don't know if you guys have had that experience with your characters
Definitely.
too, but so that's, I don't know that that's, you know, giving anything out or giving anything away, but I would just say, you know, if there are any other writers or aspiring creators out there or artists, maybe consider that. Just, I'm a big comedy nerd too, and there was a guy named Del Close who was a big improv comedy teacher. He taught Bill Murray and Mike Myers, all the greats, and he had this saying which was, don't invent, remember. Meaning if you have to make a choice about a character, a detail or something, rather than make something up, first go back and think about your own life or someone you know and see if you can use that detail, that aspect instead. And again, it's one of these weird things where the more you focus on some strange, weird little detail from your life or from the life of somebody you know, it's amazing how many people will come up to you and say, oh my God, I had an uncle who was just like that, or I'm just like that, or, you know, it's, there is like this weird universality to it.
Well, yeah, because even if it's a very strange quirk or a very particular flaw, it's like people still relate to the fact that they have weird quirks and have weird flaws.
Right.
Like, it's recognizing that, oh, it's okay if this person isn't perfect, or it's okay if they're weird, because they connect to that, not necessarily the specific decision you make, but the fact that you made the decision in the first place.
Nice. I'm curious where you got your start. Like, what was the process like? I'm assuming there's people in the audience or listening in who are wondering, like, how did you get from like I want to do to actually being and doing? Like, how did you get there?
I mean, I was always just doodling and making little comics, and then one day I got the courage to put them online, and then did that for a while, and then one day got the courage to print one of them, and then that comic ended up becoming a pitch for now Cactus Kid. So I think it's just, you start off small and you just kind of keep pushing yourself.
Are there certain website what was?
At the time it was Tapas. It was like a webcomic app where you would just post, and then every now and then you would, like, if you got a certain amount of attention, you get featured, and like that would kind of like boost your confidence, and you keep going at it, you know? Yeah, and then going to comic festivals, going to like the Zine Fest and stuff, and seeing like, oh, like they printed and made this themselves, I can do this too, you know? And then at least that's what worked for me, going to Cala, Comics Art LA.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
such a great.
Which
they're
is coming
bringing
back.
it back.
Yeah. Hopefully I get in. But yeah, that one was always really influential, because you'd see, especially there's a lot of industry people there, and you'd see them making their own stuff, and then it really, you know, influence you.
I have a very bizarre entrance into comics, and it's going to make me sound like a total fraud, but stick with me. So I was actively avoiding doing graphic novels. Like, people in college would be like, what do you want to do? And it was like, anything but graphic novels. And I just was not aware of how vast the industry had become. I just was picturing, you know, superhero comics for boys, and that was what I thought they were, because I had never really read them. I remember Raina Telgemeier's Smile came out when I was, not to age me, but like when I was a junior in high school. So I didn't really get any introduction to young comics for girls. Yeah, so after college, I started working at a publishing company in Kansas City just as an illustration intern, and I was meanwhile like trying to get into Hallmark because I thought that was like the right thing for illustrators to do. And then I ended up loving all the projects at work. They got to know my work there and ended up asking me if I wanted to, outside of work on the Anne of Green Gables graphic novel adaptation. And I was like, well, not really, but I do love Anne of Green Gables. And so I said yes and panicked because I had no idea what I was doing. I had only read my first graphic novel a month before that, which was This One Summer by Mariko and Julian Tamaki, still my favorite. Yeah, so I started working on Anne of Green Gables and fell absolutely in love with the process and was like, oh my gosh, this is what I was supposed to be doing the entire time. It was like life forced me into this, knowing that I was meant to be there. And after I finished Anne of Green Gables, I was like, I have to keep doing this. I want to keep doing the art for these, and I also want to write. So it was a very, very strange entrance, but it's exactly where I was supposed to be, I think.
I started, I played in bands and stuff like in high school, and so I always knew I wanted to be a storyteller at a very young age. So all of my songs that I wrote had to do with dragons and fantasy and just really ridiculous stuff. And I remember having a conversation with my uncle, who we used to trace over comic books, and he was like, "Oh, you like writing stories? Like, why don't you do comic books?" And I said, "Well, for some reason, the mental blocks we have on ourselves are really interesting because it's like I just thought I couldn't do that. Like that's something like a smart person would be able to do. Like I couldn't do that, but I can write a song and I'll do that. But I can't write a book. That's too hard. And so I was in the music space for a long, long time, and I just got really sick of it. It was just like a really toxic environment, and just a lot of bad stuff was always happening. And I said, I had Digital Lizards of Doom in my head, and so I said, I'm just gonna finally write it out, and just for me, I'm just gonna write the whole thing out. And then through that process, I started showing it to people, and they're like, you should like make this an actual graphic novel. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm just gonna do it for myself then. I'm like find a friend who wants to draw a couple pictures, and then I'll keep it for myself. It'll be a really cool thing I did. And I just kept going and going and going. And then I made a band with the same name, and then started touring that. And then I had a robot and a lizard on stage, and people were like, "What's the backstory behind this robot and lizard?" And I said, all right, well, let's do the book. So, and that's kind of how it happened.
Nice.
My grandfather smoked cigars, and he'd go to the 7-Eleven to buy them, and he'd take me, and they would have a spinner rack with comics there, and so I was, mesmerized, by these beautiful covers, Marvel and DC mostly, and that's how I learned how to read and to write, was just off of comics. So it's always been with me, and I never thought about a career in comics. I realized that people made them, but I just thought they all lived in New York, and I lived in Miami, and it didn't occur to me. And it wasn't until after I went through film school that I realized, what I really want to do is comics, which is pretty much the most expensive way to make that realization after several years of tuition. So, sorry, Mom and Dad. But it was my wife who was like, well, stop talking about it and just do it. And that's when I got into self-publishing, and eventually led me here.
Nice. Do you have any advice to give for somebody starting out?
Yeah, I do. It's three things. One is get a good attorney to protect your copyrights and your IP rights. Don't ever do a deal with a publisher that wants any percentage of your copyright. It's okay for them to have some of the well, if it's a creator-owned thing, if you're going to write Superman, then obviously DC owns the copyright for Superman for a little bit longer. But if it's something creator-owned, you want to retain the entire copyright. It's okay for the publisher to have usually a large percentage of the publishing rights and maybe some claim to some of the entertainment rights if it ever gets turned into a movie or TV show or whatever. But the copyright, the intellectual property, you need to own 100% of that. Don't give a publisher 100% of it. Don't give them 50% of it. Don't give them 1% of it. That's one bit of advice. The other, aside from getting a good attorney, is get a good therapist. It's I'm totally serious. Just because this is tough, you know, I mean, a lot of people have tough jobs. This one is very, I think any job that involves some level of creativity, and maybe this is just me, I don't want to speak for you guys, but you're putting a lot of yourself out there. If somebody doesn't like your book, you might feel like that's a personal rejection of you. It's not at all. But I just, you know, life is hard, and it's good to have somebody who's an advocate. And then the last thing is, I guess never be shy about your aspirations. Tell everyone who will listen that you want to write or want to do comics or want to be an artist. I think I would not be here today if I didn't have certain people who were like champions or guardian angels who I told them, I love comics, I've made comics, I gave them the comics, and even if they didn't read the comics, they could see that I was passionate enough about it, and they helped me get an opportunity to kind of level up in my career.
What he said, basically, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think the only thing I would add is what really helps me, especially when I'm writing, is like a physical outlet. So like maybe like doing like 30 minutes on the treadmill or something, like that really gets.
That's great advice.
That really stimulates.
Yeah, one thing I'll add, I'm currently enrolled in a grad program for English in Vermont, and I have a professor right now who's teaching about like American drama and was talking about playwriting and how a playwright he knows was kind of trying to find this balance between like the career part of your life and then life, and he's like, there's no such thing. Like especially if you have a creative career, that is your life. It's so tied up into everything you do and everything you are, and it's like it's so much more than just a job. It's literally your personality. It's your heart. It's your passion. You have to want it. You have to want this so badly, and give up so much and work really, really hard, and that's what I'll say. Like, it just has to really matter to you.
Nice. I forgot to see if there were any questions from the audience. We've got a little bit of time left.
Oh,
Gabriel?
Gabriel.
You mentioned that your next character's name is Gumshoe. I remember that that's mentioned in the book, and one of the world is back in San Diego.
One of my characters?
No,
Brenna.
My next book is called Gumshoe. The title of it is called Gumshoe. Yeah. Funnily enough, I played Carmen Sandiego as a kid, but it's different. It's yeah.
I used to play with my students.
Oh, nice. Yeah. It has a detective element. These girls are kind of like on the run trying to find an outlaw who is stealing the mail. And it's more Wild West. So they call themselves the Gumshoe Gang. They're like hunting down somebody, but it's more like Wild West, weird. It's so weird. It's like a crazy adventure, but like with only elements of detective.
That's cool.
All right, one more question.
Yeah, jeez.
That was my last question, is what are you working on now? So.
Thank you to the ringer in the audience. There's Volume 2 of Scoop comes out in September, and then Volumes 3 and 4 will be in 6-month increments after that. And I have another book I'm doing with Maverick and Mad Cave called Detective, which is a sort of like a post-apocalyptic film noir detective story. Yeah.
Well, yeah, so I'm currently working on Gumshoe. The last thing I'll say is that I love the post office so much. I'm obsessed. It's weird. And the story is very much based around the post office, and there's a mailman with a cat named Dogie, and that's what it is. It comes out in like early 2026.
Nice.
I'm working on the rest of the Digital Lizards of Doom graphic novel series, where I'm doing about 8 books total.
Wow.
And so book 3 comes out in December, and pretty excited about that one. And then the rest of them come out every 6 months. So yeah.
I'm currently working on the 3rd installment of Cactus Kid. So I've been drawing a lot of monster trucks right now, and so my hand hurts.
All right. Thank you all so much, and thank you, panelists. I love doing this because I get to hear everybody's cool stories, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for the great
Well,
question.
thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not sure what's next up, so. Next up, the next panel. Am I squeezing in?
Yeah.